A polis is not a totali either, but a transactional form of aggregation in constant state of movement. The transnationalism is there, but is being bracketed and pushed aside. In what follows, I'd like then to explore the poetics of this political utopia, the inactuality of this politics, and hopefully I would like to cast some light on the conceptual apparatus Olson sets in motion to bring us to the cusp of the utopian possibility of polis, the cusp where the inactual utopia becomes perhaps actual. The heterogeneous polis constructs in the blueprint of Gloucester, as I said, is a fictional construct with imaginary roots in a mythic past and almost no hopes of becoming actualized in the near future. In one of his addresses to Ferrini, Olson seals his letter with the following disclaimer. These are memorial words having to do with in what sense utopia is all dream. And polis indeed is such an actual dream, a necessary dream, set against the, quote, dreamless present of merchants and hat makers. Also, these memorial words also offered to Ferrini ought then to be read in the mode of the anterior future, the mode of a celebration of a past future, single most inactual verbal modality known to language and available to all of us, lives in the polis as glimpsed in the Maximus poems were and will be for the past future temporal perspective. Olson's polis looks both backward and toward. These lives will be the result of an active, participatory flow of interliving of the individual in the community and of the community in the individual. Interliving is a term that I borrow from the pragmatist philosopher Shannon Sullivan and indicates the passing through of a series of transactions, both discursive and performed, between self and world. In the utopian past future of Gloucester, there were not, and there will not be, deteriorated lives, but active, interactive lives. Olson's interest in the transactionality of interliving, the kind of disposition toward living that fulfills the promise of heterogeneity, can be found right at the beginning of his career in his 1947 poem Ishmael, a groundbreaking study, of course, of Melville's Moby Dick. In this book, Olson celebrates the birth of the Pacific man, a new kind of explorer who is first and foremost a world citizen, thus a transnational citizen, who has been exposed and has learned to embrace and respect the heterogeneity of nature, natural species, human ethnicities, cultures, religions, and has done so from within the most malleable and in the end the most liberating interliving disposition. The mercantile expansion across the Pacific, Olson writes, closed the movement of westward migration that inaugurated America. And this transnational movement across the Pacific could have, at least, and it does, at least in a fiction, of course, in Melville's fiction, put an end to the rapacious mentality of explorers and conquistadores, a mentality that has been passed down from ancient Greece to our days. The Pacific, Olson writes, opens a new history. It's the end of the unknown, which Homer's and Dante's Ulysses open men's eyes to. It's the end of the individual responsible only to himself. This individual inimical to interliving is, of course, Sahab, the arrogant epitome of the individual responsible only to himself, and the last embodiment of Ulysses, the intelligent but arrogant, deceitful, and warmongering self. After Moby Dick is full stop, Olson writes, whereas Ishmael, the Pacific man, continues to live through Maximus, because Maximus is indeed a trans-historical and transnational persona that Olson has conceived after Ishmael. As Olson presented, Maximus is Maximus of Gloucester, but also Maximus of Tyre, also Maximus' definition, and Maximus, the poet Charles Olson himself. Through Maximus, Olson presents a fully formed, transitive version of identity, a self that is shaped, informed, transformed by many others, a self that is constituted by the continuous flow of time, history, cultures, and languages. Above all, the sense of identity also conveys through Maximus is one shaped by a commitment to interliving, a commitment to the space of encounter and combination with and between selves. The utopian transactionality, then, epitomized in Maximus, is set in contrast to the history of the city of Gloucester, which also presents, in the global context of human migrations, transcontinental venues opened by mercantile trades, the birth and exponential development of capitalism. Gloucester, as also narrates, without a touch of nostalgia, was created and shaped by the forces of globalization and is, not surprisingly, a spoiled and soiled locale. Underneath the actual Gloucester, however, the Maximus poem celebrates the memory of the inactual locality, what used to be or could have been Gloucester in pre-Mesozoic times, when the land belonged to the world continent Pangaea, a mass of land of extraordinary proportions that got broken up during the Paleozoic-Mesozoic transition, giving rise to the four continents as we know them now: Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. This celebration of Pangaea is also a melancholic festival of imaginary recovery of such lost unity, and the effect of Olson's melancholia powerfully shifts our perceptions and our sense of geographic reality. We're thus asked to look at Gloucester, a small fishing village on the North Atlantic coast, and see it anew for what used to be part of the Canary Islands, sitting almost in the middle of Pangaea, and naval in the worldwide continent of Pangaea. In this planetary recollection, Gloucester was part of a tightly connected world community before the land was pushed west during the breakup of Pangaea, proving then that the chain of memory is resurrection and that Maximus' own memory is the history of time. The Maximum poems merges the present to the very distant past and makes Mesozoic time legible again, either through the land or through its people. The final effect of this overlaying of memories, this resurrection of long chains of historical and planetary events, is one of translocal and transhistorical transformation of the familiar. We thus read about the inhabitants of Gloucester, the Sicilian American neighbors, the Tarantinos, islanders by definition, but also Punic, people of the sea, the American Indian Mi'kmaq, Tarantines, the unnamed Portuguese American neighbors, Phoenicians in Pangaea, and we meet necessarily also Olson's own ancestors from Sweden, Norway. Each member of this heterogeneous population is located and then relocated in their territory, shown to belong to the contemporary Gloucester community as they once belonged to the territory of Pangaea and the vast community of Pangaea. Olson can thus describe himself as looking out the window and contemplating my Neolithic neighbors, he says, thus indicating a permanent state of shared community that goes back more than 150 million years. Like its people, the landscape of Gloucester, including its coastline, is by turns perfectly familiar and also entirely translocal and transhistorical. Gloucester, as Olson puts it, is the, quote, boundary of land, literally adjacent and adjoining mid-Mesozoic at the place of the parting of the seams of all the earth. For Gloucester was naval Pangaea. A similar but more dreamlike form of translocal and transhistorical mutation can be found in the tersely pictorial cycle of winter seascape poems spanning the 3 months of December 65 through March 66. And I will skip this because my time is running out, but these are beautiful section of poems where the land becomes, floats upward towards this utopia of floats backward into other lands, into Japan, into China. These sadly orchestrated transformations of the local into the translocal, the historical into the transhistorical, the actual into the inactual are the vectors or means by which the dream of polis approaches a state of objective reality and thus actuality. Here is also where we begin to appreciate the subtlety of Olson's conceptual apparatus. The transformation I have just described are examples of remapping, or the mapping of each object, or person, or group of people onto itself, albeit on a different level. In other words, each transformed object remains in its place, but it's remapped onto itself and turned upward toward the actual utopian, the dream, or downward toward the distant past of Pangaea.